back to the Beyond Broadcast podcast, a show which takes a behind-the-scenes look at industry professionals and their lives working in the broadcasting and entertainment industry. Today, I'm speaking with New Zealand film director and writer Paula Whetu Jones, a trailblazing Māori filmmaker, writer and director whose work has consistently challenged audiences while amplifying voices too often unheard. From her early award-winning documentaries like Fangirls to her powerful dramatic work on Waru and her co-writing and co-directing of the feature film Whina, Paula tells stories with unflinching honesty and deep cultural integrity. A mother, grandmother, and a fierce advocate for authentic storytelling, Paula creates from lived experience, bringing truth, grit, and humanity to every frame. Her most recent project that I can talk about, The Doctor's Wife, was released back in 2025 and is a definite testament to this. And welcome to the show, Paula.
Kia ora, Jamie. Nice to be here.
We'll start from an early point, and this is where I usually start with the journey. And one of the things that I noticed in a lot of interviews that you've spoken about your work and your body of work and your creativity, among other things, is you said that your upbringing shaped a lot of the stories that you tell. Now, how did growing up in your sort of environment really change the way that you kind of viewed things as not only a filmmaker, but as a documentarian?
Well, I grew up in the 70s, one of six, single mum. My mum was a single mum and worked in factories and was on the benefit. Our father wasn't around ever. And then I think my filmmaking is shaped by having to survive and watching people do what they need to do in order to survive. And having that lens often is it's interesting because the people that assess our stuff, right, often don't come from that sort of background. So see the big flaws, which aren't flaws, they're actually, that storytelling. These are our stories. And coming from a working class welfare background, we've had to be chameleons and fit into the world. It's not really made for us if we want to jump out of it. And seeing my mum struggle and my siblings, and I was always the black white sheep of the family. My dad's Māori and my mum's Irish, Pākehā Irish, and we had a big family, but everyone was the same. Like I was the one that just wanted to do my own thing, and did basically, but we never had any money. And if we needed anything that wasn't for school or whatever, we had to work. And so we worked from really young, and we learnt responsibility, and we learnt not to let people down. And the stories that I keep trying to tell are stories of our people, and our people being Māori, but also the lower socioeconomic groups, because there's so many stratas, there's so many sort of levels of what we are and who we are. And I think if you don't have that appreciation of, survival and struggling through life, you often get the story wrong and you focus on the wrong things. And so that was a thing that kind of drove me to wanting to tell our stories. And by our stories, I mean people who are from the lower socioeconomic groups. So that's, leaving school at 15, having my first child at 17, and then the next at 21. Education wasn't a thing, and work was. So, but then I kind of saw other people and were wondering why they came in and out, and it was university students. And so Waddies, you'll know Waddies, everybody in Hawke's Bay works at Waddies. I really enjoyed it, and the people were amazing. I've always been really interested in people and how they deal with things. So my upbringing is why I'm good at what I do. It's not in spite of. And I naturally gravitate to people who don't have that safety net and want to help people that, are trying to get into our industry, that don't have mum and dad, the bank of mum and dad, or, the big family safety net. Or that's why I don't agree with unpaid internships. All good if you've got somewhere to stay for free, and all good if you have family that can support you. But absolutely impossible if you don't.
You touched on a couple of things that I really want to dive deeper into. One of the things
Mm.
that I've always found interesting was a quote that you said in an interview, which was the fact that you really like to tell stories from inside the world, not from the outside
Yeah.
looking. And it kind of goes back to what you were saying about the whole idea of like, it's harder to have someone try and attempt to tell your story if they have
Mm.
no lived experience or understanding of it, which I love.
Yeah.
And one of the other things I really wanted to touch on is the fact that it almost seems like, and maybe you can correct me, Paula, that it almost seems like you took a personal responsibility of feeling like, if I have the ability to make these stories, I want to make sure that I'm telling the stories as much as I can and making sure I can share that with people. Is that kind of like
Mm.
something that you feel like you've always taken on in a way?
Absolutely. It's a responsibility to our communities, right? And for Māori especially, it seems to be, we have a bigger responsibility to our whānau hapu iwi. But for our lower socioeconomic groups, I have a responsibility to them because I'm not looking into that group. I grew up, in that group of people, and they are my people, and they will continue to be my people. And there's so much love and warmth and amazing talent and skill. But like I said, if you don't have the right people in your corner, it's just going to be wasted. You don't have family that can feed you into the industry, and our industry is full of nepotism, and all good. That's fine, but the door needs to be open for us as well. And it's been a bit of a struggle, especially raising the children as well, because my 3 children. They're grown up now, but when I first started working in the industry, nobody even knew I had children because it wasn't a thing. Now, there's a lot of things in place for people with kids, which is great. And I want to be those guys too. I want to be the people that make sure that your kids are taken care of.
And Paula, in that respect, who did open the door for you, or did you kick the door in yourself? Because the way that you describe it, it's like you went from the Waddy's factory to then going straight into making documentaries. Was there like a training period? Was there someone that kind of noticed that you were kind of itching to tell stories? How did that door open for you?
No, well, I went to film school. I tried a whole bunch of stuff. I was a youth worker, and I was a maitre d', and I worked in hospitality, and I did all sorts of things while the kids were small. And I went back to high school. I actually went to Hastings Boys High because they were the only ones that had adult classes. And it was the first year that they did it, and I was 21, and I just had another baby. And so I would go to school and then go home and feed the baby, and mum would be looking after the baby, and then I'd go back to school. Yeah, I was a bit of a slow learner when it came to having kids. It just kind of there was kids around us growing up, and it wasn't a big deal. We had kids. That's it. It wasn't like, oh my God, the world's gonna end. We had kids. My mum, my younger brother was 10 when I had my first one, so it was just a natural continuation. And I'd always looked after kids. We always had kids. We've been babysitting everyone's kids. So it's not oh my God, we've got children. What do we do now? So things kind of, mum worked at Waddy's in the morning and I did the night shift. And so I just take the baby and swap, and that's what we did. But so it was the people at Mr. Hutchinson at Hastings Boys High School who said I should go to university. And I'd always just thought university was for rich kids and brainy kids, and I was neither. Well, I didn't think I was. And he said, no, it'll be good for you. So they helped me apply to Waikato University. And I went, and I had my 2 kids, and I had to put them into daycare. I think one was 5 and one was, I don't know, 2, 3. I don't know. I can't remember the ages at the minute, but the ages of the kids. But I went and did a year, and it went really well, and then I didn't, and it didn't go really well, and then I sort of crashed and burned. Something happened, and wasn't coping, and yeah, so then I quit. And it was something really, actually, it was a few little things that turned into big things, and I just wasn't coping with the workload as well as the kids, and a personal thing happened to me, and I just crashed. So my mum took the kids, and I went to Auckland to try and get a job, and I was working in hospitality again. And then I came across a South Seas Film and TV school. And I thought, oh, this looks interesting. So I went and did the 1 week course, and I'm like, oh, this is me. This is what I want to do. And so I went to South Seas, and I said, I want to enroll next year. And they said, oh, all the spaces, because it was the end of the year, all of the spaces are full. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm meant to do it. And they're like, yeah. Back then, in the late 90s, there was only 50 people on the South Seas Film and TV course. And I said, yeah, no, I'm meant to do it. I have to do it. This is what I'm supposed to do. And they were going, well, people don't drop out because they spend all year trying to get in. And I'm like, yeah, but if they do, can I have their space? And then they were worried about my children, and then paying for it, because I think back then it was $12,000 for the year, which was a ton load of money. And I'm like, well, just let me worry about that. And I just went back every day. Sometimes I went back twice a day to say, has anybody dropped out? So to this day, I don't really know whether they just let me in because I was annoying, or whether somebody actually did drop out. So I did the South Seas Film and TV course in 1996, and I sucked at, I did another dumb thing. So I did lots of really dumb things, and I managed to break my arm and my toes. I won't tell you how. And so that was about a week or two just before film school started. So I didn't get to learn camp because I couldn't hold it, but I also didn't have to do those horrible team building exercises where you touch everybody and roll around on everybody and stuff. So that was the bonus. But I still had to try and drive my car, which was a pretty crappy car at the time. But so I was working and going to film school. Mum had the kids, and so and then we went back to Hastings at the end of film school. It was really good. I still have friends from film school. It was a really good experience. Loved it. Hard work, but and then our editor, I trained in on-screen presenting, which I sucked at, and editing, which I also sucked at. But what I realised that I wanted to do was doco soon after we finished. But the editor was commissioned to build a regional TV station down here in Hawke's Bay. I'm in Hawke's Bay at the moment, in Hastings, and so a whole bunch of us came down and ran the TV station. It was fantastic. So 1997, Hawke's Bay TV started, and we got to program it, and I became the 2IC program manager, and we also did everything. Like, we needed news, we went out and got news. We needed ads, we went out and did ads. We had the shopping channel, we plugged into Deutsche Welle, we plugged into Nauru Sports, because they had a sports station in Nauru. We plugged into other regional stations with their regional programs, and we swapped, and we had film. We bought films from the New Zealand Film Archives, but we pretty much could do whatever we wanted, which was great, until, of course, the bosses started doing too many contra deals, and it all folded, and he was put in jail for fraud, and we were all sort of left holding the empty bucket. And so then I came back to Auckland again. I had 3 children by now, like I said, so Lena, and went back to Auckland to try and get a job. And we tried all the people who I thought would give me a job, and nobody did. And I rocked up to Communicado, and it was Ross Jennings and Robert Boyd Bell who gave me my first job back in Auckland. And
Wild.
John Bates, this big Scottish guy who was my mentor, he was the one that got me the job of directing Gang Girls, because I had asked him, and he's like, well, I can't do it. But I used to bug him relentlessly. Let me do something. I can do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. I can do this. And every time I heard, because Communicado did a whole bunch of reality stuff back in the day, every time I heard something that I had knowledge of, I'd say, oh yeah, I'll be the PA, or I'll be the runner, or I'll do whatever, to get onto those projects. So they did like Radio Bride, and which was the first radio show that two strangers got married, in early 2000 maybe. But and a friend of mine was doing a doco called Dope Behind the Smoke, and I knew a lot of dope smokers, so that. So I introduced a whole lot of people that, because usually they just use fixes and everybody used the same. So I introduced a whole lot of people that they wouldn't have had any sort of contact with, and and pretty much I was willing to do anything. I was the runner. We did Hog Heaven, which was the Tamaki brothers riding around New Zealand, and I was on the back of the bike, filming. I could do anything, and it was a really good school, because I sort of, Gang Girls wasn't hard. It wasn't hard because these were
It
my
was like
people.
you were like living that experience, or knew people in that kind of experience. So it wasn't like you were going into some foreign land. It was like, mate, this is down the road from me. Like, if anything, you guys are the ones that are foreign here that I'm bringing into the situation. Yeah.
And and I listened and talked to people. So anywhere, like my father died during Gang Girls, and I went down to Christchurch and that's where I met Faye Manako, one of the ladies on Gang Girl, the Black Power lady. And I thought, I'll never pass up an opportunity to talk to people and and hear their stories. So and that went really well.
Do you think a big part of that ability that you have to kind of, and I'm not going to use the word insert because it's not, you're naturally kind of being able to be in that environment. Do you think a little bit is to do with the fact that you come from a background where you feel like you're a lot more open to listening to people, or a lot more open to not really judging people in that sense? Because you did talk about nepotism in the industry, and it kind of goes back to, and I can think about it even probably from a university perspective, or like you said, film school. Could you have seen half of the students that were in your film class going and having a conversation with the leader of Black Power openly and feeling confident going into that?
No, I've just because these people are just people, and I knew them before they were Black Power or before they were mongrel mob. So it's not and I don't really have a fear of them, and it's sort of you treat them like, I wasn't interested in the gang stuff. I know the gang stuff. I'm interested in the people.
Yeah.
And so that's why it was successful, because I was interested in their lives. The gang stuff is just one part of their lives, but I was interested in who they were and why they did the things that they did. And also I would share about my experiences. So, a lot of the time we knew the same people. So, but film school, I think there was only maybe one other person that even had children. So there's that as well.
You mentioned the fact that a lot of the time people are kind of concerned about the idea of you having children and attending. Do you feel like that was a massive blocker for you when you were trying to push yourself into the industry? So these guys at Communicado, obviously after your work within Play TV, do you feel like you still would have had those same barriers if it wasn't for Communicado coming to the table and being like, yeah, we'll take a chance on you, we'll have a look at what you got? Do you think you would have been able to find other opportunities, or do you feel like that in itself would have been quite a massive barrier for you?
Having the kids.
Yeah.
Well, you just, every working parent knows that you just have to sort your shit out, make sure the kids are fine. My mum did come and live with me for 5 years when the kids were, one was at high school, one was at intermediate, one was primary, because it was too hard. And I had good mates, but work is work, home is home. And a lot of the time, like I said, work didn't even know I had children. And my kids were really well behaved, and they knew that, I'm the breadwinner. I'm the one. If you want those basketball shoes, if you want to go that basketball camp, I need to work. We didn't have, like I said, my mum was in the same situation. When she came to live with me, she was a caregiver for old people. And then, she didn't pay rent or anything. She helped me with the kids. So you just do what you need to do. Incidentally, I would have done a lot of things different because of, my kids. You do what you think is best at the time. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, I would have
Mm.
changed a lot of things. I wouldn't have put work so much in the front. But yeah, like I said, when you don't have those backstops or that financial freedom, you have to take care of yourself and your children and your family and everybody else that needs help at the time, because there was no time when I had all the kids at home that I didn't have a brother or a nephew or somebody else living with us. It was just what we did. It wasn't anything you think about. It's just somebody needs somewhere to live. You've got a couch.
Yeah, survival mode basically. It's
Yeah,
like you just
survival
need to
mode.
get through. Yeah, and
Yeah,
I can
that's
I can
right.
totally understand that, Paul. And I
Mm,
think I'm sure your kids probably understand it. I don't think it's a case of like, I know you say hindsight's a beautiful thing and there's things that you'd change, but I'm sure your kids probably say the exact opposite and probably know how hard you worked, and considering you put so much into it, it's
mm,
incredibly admirable. Like your story, reading about it was something that I always loved, and I think
mm,
the cool thing is, I felt like even in respect to your other documentary, The Hidden, it's almost
mm,
like that motherly kind of instinct came through in a way as well,
mm.
because you were spending times with kids on the street.
Yeah,
And do you feel like in that respect as well, being a mother kind of played a part in you being able to get so close to those subjects because
yeah,
you were able to kind of look at it from a different perspective
ab-
in that respect?
absolutely. And my kids, I didn't separate them. Like if I would go and get the kids on the street, fish and chips, but I would get fish and chips and bread and butter and sauce, just, and I would the kids would butter the bread and we'd all go down and eat with them. Like I wasn't like, oh, those kids over there and my kids. My
Mm,
kids knew that these kids had a pretty rough situation. I took my daughter to Palestine. She was 13, and again when she was 17, my youngest. And people are like, oh my God, you're taking her over there. I'm like, yeah, they have kids over there.
yeah.
They do have kids over there. And she's the youngest one's travelled with me a lot. But I never separated my work and my kids. Like Mama Tere, the kids came with me. They were around the transgender community because they're a community, and so they never saw it as anything different.
I
Yeah,
love that you managed to blend the two in a way as well. I know maybe some people like don't blend personal with work, but like in a way that's probably the
mm,
way that it's best worked for you, because it means that you do have this like deeper level of
yeah,
understanding and going back to that as well. And I feel like there's so much passion in every project that you seem to make,
yeah.
and I feel like that's reflected in even what you're just saying now. Did you feel there was any resistance from the production companies? Because I know Communicator would have obviously pitched these documentaries, but did you ever feel like there was any pushback from them being like you're getting too close to the subjects, or like Paula,
No,
like
pretty much.
maybe you shouldn't like go into these situations, or were they all like,
No,
no, go for it, mate, you're getting us like some absolute gold because the stories are like incredible?
no, they pretty much left me alone because who else was going to go out and hang out with street kids? I remember the week I thought, I brought them all in for a meeting because we're making a program about them, and I wanted them to come and see the people we were making. And it was very funny because there was a lot of sort of resistance to these kids coming in. I'm like, no, no, absolutely not. You guys got a budget for us to do this doc on these kids. I want these kids to see, who's making the film. And the first time because I did all the research. I do all my own research, so I did all the research and took it in. And Ross said to me, "Oh well, that's good. We'll give it to somebody else to direct." I'm like, "Oh nah, no, absolutely not. I wasn't the right." Well, I may not have been the right gender. I don't know. I wasn't the cool young thing. I was young. I was cool, but not that cool young thing. They had, and this is the thing. A lot of the things that I've sort of researched and taken into production companies, they want to take off me and give to somebody else. I'm like, no, No. So it's been a fight for a long time. But I sort of think that if I'm expecting people to open up their lives and be vulnerable to me, then it's only fair that if they want or need to see part of my life, that they're able to. Always done it, always been like that. You know, if I'm going to get honesty, I have to be honest, and I have to be giving, and I have to be vulnerable. It's the wrong way. I've been told lots of times, you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be asking the cameraman and the sound man if they want to know anything. I'm like, why? They might. It's just like they might want to know something. I'm taking them into a world that they don't know. I'm pretty sure. And it was very funny when we did Gang Girls and we were down the South Island, and Faye was talking about, a big fight that started in the marquee and bottles were thrown, and she's laughing and she's going, we were having fun. And I said to the camera guy and the sound guy, is there anything that you want to know? And then the sound guy said to me, oh yeah, there's one thing I'd like to ask Faye. And I'm like, what's that? And she's, which part of that was fun? And she starts laughing because, they're mortified. She's saying, we're punching and bottles are flying and I'm crawling through. And she said, we're laughing. And it's like, which exact bit was the fun bit? And she's, but that's just, I get told that I blur the lines too much. And I'm like, well, it's just how I do it. And that's the only way I know how to do it. And I wouldn't do it any other way because it's it's collaboration, right? And I need I remember when we did Street Kids, our camera operator was like, oh my God, I don't want to go into these abandoned buildings and 3:00 in the morning. I'm like, well, that's what we have to do. And it was horrible because he was actually the Police 10-7 camera operator as well. And so the kids were really a little bit like, oh, we've seen him with the police. But by the end of the shoot, he was just as enamored with these kids as I was.
The Beyond Broadcast Podcast.
Do you feel like that's a common experience with the crew that comes along with you without knowing you and then coming onto these projects? They end up getting just thrown into a world and then you see them almost being just as passionate as you were when you first kind of thought about this project. And what would you say has been probably the most eye-opening one or situation that you've had with maybe some of your crew who have been thrown into the sticks and been like, yep, let's see how you fit in?
Yeah, probably Palestine because, I just wanted them to come and I didn't have much money and I'm like, that's gonna change your life and it has. I mean, that changed my life. It changes everybody that goes over there.
Yeah, 100%.
But yeah.
We'll fast forward a little bit because I think, Paula, one of the bigger things, and like I've said, if you don't want to talk about it, we don't have to talk about it, but it's obviously a big defining part of your journey in the last couple of years, which is obviously 2010. Now, we'll kind of go quickly over it, which was the fact that in 2010 you discovered that you had a disease that caused paralysis, among other things, and it was kind of such a massive shift because I know from just speaking to you already, you've managed to somehow balance having 3 kids. You've been working your ass off to the bone. There's been those moments of being like, can I do this? And I'm sure, there's been moments where you probably had burnout as well. To then have that moment in 2010, this massive shift.
Yeah.
What was it like being told in that moment? Because I remember listening to an interview where you had a doctor tell you that your paralysis was psychological, that was due to overworking, among other things. Can you take me through that particular moment? Because for you, that must have been the most insane thing to hear. And having that kind of out-of-body moment where you're like, what the fuck is going on, essentially?
Well, yeah, I mean, they told me a lot of things, but they never told me, and they still don't know what caused it. It's idiopathic, and because I just sort of collapsed. I collapsed pretty much. It took a couple of hours. I saw back, but that was the beginnings of Spinal Destination. But it was interesting because they told me all of these things. Well, mostly they didn't know, right? So it must have been psychological. I'm like, well, okay, push me off the bed, and we'll have a crack, eh? We'll see if I jump up. But it was to be honest, thought it was a really, because I'm always about signs. I'm look for the signs, look for the signs. I'm like, oh, I'm obviously meant to write something about being in hospital. So I started to write, and I wrote about everybody, but then I'm like, okay, yeah, all right, 2 weeks now. I've had enough of this, Or whoever's pulling the strings better speed it up a bit because I'm getting a bit nervous. And then they sent me down to Christchurch, and I thought that I was going to die down there because it was horrible. And there's just the plane ride, and it was just horrible, and they weren't ready for me. And the hospital was about to be demolished, or the bit that I was in, and I'm like literally in the hall. It was just horrible. But again, I wrote about the people, and then I went to Burwood, and I'm like, okay, right now I'm gonna get some physio, and it's gonna come back. And so I kept writing about stuff, and then 5 months later, I rolled out of there, and it was horrible. It was horrible, and was like, no, this is not part of the plan. So I thought, okay, well, I'll get my daughter, because she was in Hawke's Bay. She was 11, and we'll go back to Auckland. Well, first of all, I had to live with my mum, just trying to figure out how to make money and stuff, because it's like I'm not going to be on a benefit. So I went back to Auckland and tried to resume my job, and it didn't work. And I had a car accident. It's just
Oh, bloody hell.
just a whole lot of stuff. And I thought, no, I couldn't get a job. No one, and everybody I just ceased to exist. And so I thought, okay, 2000, it was 2000, and I a whole year because my son took his life in 2013. So I don't even know what that year, what happened that year. I can't tell you, but so that was, I was living I'd moved back to help him before he died, because he was having these problems, and he died anyway. All of us were living 5 generations in one house. We were all trying to help him, and it didn't work. So that squashed also all of my spiritual beliefs, all my beliefs. If I had, all gone, because I'm like, okay, this isn't for me. So I moved back to Auckland, and no one would employ me. So I started a company with a friend, and our first doco was in Cambodia. And I'm like, right, right. I'm back in the chair, and oh God, it just about killed me. I took my daughter with me. She was maybe 14 or 15. We'd done Palestine again, because I was doing a documentary with Rob Harley. Because the only reason I was doing it, because he said, we'll look for cures. So we did that. And then he said, oh, look, there are no cures, but I want to take you back to Palestine. I'm like, hell no. Hell no. I'm not going back to Palestine in a wheelchair. And that's when my daughter was 13. So it was 2 years after I became paralyzed. And I'm like, nah. And he's like, you have to. And I'm like, I don't have to. But then I thought, I probably do have to, because, this is the thing. I expect people to be vulnerable with me. And so I'm like, okay, we went. And it was good, but it was horrible. It was good for me, but not good for me. It was hard, so hard and hot and horrible. But I took my daughter with me and went with Rob Harley. It actually changed Rob Harley's life, that trip to Palestine, because he'd not been there, and he's deeply religious. And so, but started our company, and we did a first doco in Cambodia about a Maori guy who heads an organisation back then in 2014, 15, called Apopo, which trains giant African rats. Well, he works for the guy that started it. Trains giant African rats in Tanzania, and he was going to bring them into Cambodia to do landmine detection, or detecting unexploded ordinances. And he was, it all sort of flows, right? So I had a friend that I met in Palestine who worked for the UNDP, who was a Māori guy. Turns out we were family. He connected me with Te Committee in Cambodia. And I wanted to do a 3-part, one Mongolia, Cambodia, Palestine, landmine detection thingy, or, mine clearance groups that are headed by Māori men. But we only got enough money for one, so we did Cambodia. And we went over there, everything was going fine until Ebola hit Africa and no rats. And I'm like, oh shit, we can't do a doco on bringing rats into Cambodia with no rats. That's pretty hard. So I just sent, because we didn't have any money. Like, we got Māori TV budgets, which is always a lot less than mainstream. So I just sent my crew, who was Scotty Burns and Roy Ta'aho, over to Tanzania to film the training, and then we sort of met back at home. But it was cool because Te Komiti was part of the peacekeeping mission when he first started in the army in 1990. So he's come full circle, still doing the mine clearance, but he was a peacekeeper, and they were training the Khmer Rouge soldiers to do the land mine clearance, and training the I think it was the Khmer Rouge soldiers to do it. But so we gone full circle. He'd gone full circle, and had those connections with people he still knew back in 1990. So it was cool. It was really nice, and we did a couple of Kiwis who were working, and profiled the Cambodians. It was very hard for me though, because I have to be up first and go to bed last, because that's just how I roll.
But one thing I want to touch on, Paula, because I hate stopping you in that sense,
Yeah.
but one thing I have to ask, because you talk about vulnerability, but the thing I don't ever sense in the stories that you've been telling me is vulnerability in the sense where you almost have time for vulnerability. Like the stories that you're telling me and the way that you talk about you've lost all sense of faith and religion because of the various things that have happened all over the time, on top of the subject matter that you're speaking about. And I can speak to, obviously, what you were talking about in terms of Cambodia. I went to the neighboring country of Laos, where they did mine clearing, and meeting multiple people that had family members die from digging gardens and then accidentally hitting a mine. And then you're like, okay, cool, that's granddad's lost his leg. And the way that they talk about it is so blasé. Yeah, I'm trying not to cry and feeling like, how can these people wake up in the morning, is kind of the way that I say it. Like, how was that for you, tackling such subject matter? Does it not affect you in a way, like, deeply? Or do you feel like because of the multiple things that have happened throughout your life, you feel like maybe you look at it from a different perspective? How is it that you kind of go through the subject matter and still are able to tackle it on new films without kind of getting to a level of, like, I feel like I would break down completely in a way. Like, that's just me being straight up. Like, I'm not sure I could tackle it.
I get it, but I think it's the way that we were brought up. I mean, we were brought up in violence, right up until I was 12. That's all we knew how to spot it. We knew how to get away from it. And, women and girls were there to be used, and men fought. But it's my responsibility for the people who are like the people who lost their legs in the paddy fields. They're in my, I always talk to them. It's not, I don't just talk to the people who I'm following. I talk to the communities. Like I made my crew stay with the Cambodian deminers, and I said to them, look, if I wasn't in a wheelchair, I'd be staying here too. I wouldn't, but it's camaraderie.
Yeah,
but
of course.
Just because it's we need to align with these people, and I still feel that we're not, because we can leave. But while we're there, I'm going to listen to you. You talk however much you want to talk, and I'll eat with your family, and we'll bring what we can, and we'll help where we can. And the only way I can help with these situations is to tell their story. So hopefully, people understand a bit more about how, where, and why. And that's the whole Palestine thing too. But no, I mean, I do get upset, but it's not I don't feel like I can, in front of people, because it's them that's got the hardship, not me. I mean, I feel for them, of course, but for me to go to pieces in front of them would be a bit. I totally go to pieces when I'm by myself, but I would never. For me, I don't want to disrespect their hardship
Like
by going,
infantilize it,
I
sort of in a
know
way.
what you're going through,
Yeah.
you know. So, I'll go to pieces when I get back to wherever, or sitting in the toilet or whatever. And then I sort of like, take a few deep breaths and off I go again. But I do think it's the fight or flight that I grew up with that has helped me be able to compartmentalize the shitty things that I come across, and the horrible things that people have to endure. Yeah.
I appreciate the honesty there, Paula, because I think if I was to look at it from any other perspective or speak to anyone else, I don't think they would put it in that perspective. I think a lot of people would take it from, I don't know. It's just one of those things that, unless you've worked in that industry or worked specifically in those sort of subject matters, I don't think anyone really has the same way of dealing with it compared to others. I think a lot of people find new ways. It was like there was a war journalist podcast that I listened to recently where the guy talked about the fact that, he had been in conflict zones, and he talked about how it sickened him that he was excited about it before he used to go. And then in retrospect now, it's something he can't even think about doing anymore. He's like, I would never go back, which is kind of odd. I think, it's interesting to hear how different people deal with it in that sense. And I think this is where I find it interesting when you switched kind of a little bit more from docos to then dramas, which to me, it takes its own sort of role in terms of storytelling, because of the fact that in this respect, you're trying to tell someone else's story, or in the very least, and especially when we're talking about Wadu, you are still telling someone's story, but from the perspective of it being fictional, and particularly with Medi, which is your kind of vignette that you made as a part of that. And we spoke about the fact that you mentioned that particularly when you were younger, women and violence were attached in some way, and watching that, why was it so important for you that story wasn't softened in any way? Because I know that you've spoken in interviews before that people are like, this is too much, you can't put this on. Why did you feel like people need to be confronted with this and know, like, this happens, this is not like some thing that's a fictional story, this is what happens? Why is it for you that you felt it was important to tell it that way?
And it happens a lot worse. I mean, it's important for me, because if we keep softening the truth, we're never actually going to deal with it, right? And why should I soften the truth for other people's sensibilities? Why should I? Why should we? And this is another reason, other than the fact that drama has a whole lot more people to help you. It's actually easier in a wheelchair to do drama, because there's a whole bunch of people to help you. And I can tell those stories, like, if the truth isn't out there for people to see, then nobody has to deal with it, right? And you can, I've always said, well, people can turn off, but at least I've put it out there. Like, you can't say it's not out there, you just choose not to see it. Like, for Testify, the evangelical drama, I'm like, a discussion we had was, let's kill the priest. And they're like, oh, we can't kill the priest. I'm like, we totally can kill the priest. The priest that was interfering with the kids. And I'm like, no, we can't kill the priest. I'm like, why can't we kill the priest? Let's kill the priest. I'm pretty sure there are people that want to kill the priest that has molested them. So let's just do it. Let's put it out there. We didn't get a second season because there's but I'm just like, why not? That's what drama is. Let's kill the priest. Let's kill the priest in the first episode, and set it up that okay, you can have all this redemption and stuff, but it still doesn't change the fact that you might want to kill the priest. Of course you won't, because unless you do. But what I'm saying is that we, especially in New Zealand, we do not like to hold the mirror up to ourselves. Like, years ago, I was trying to do docos on sex. No, what is it? Sex tourism, like men here going over to Vietnam and Cambodia and buying children, and the just stuff around pornography and suicide. I wanted to do suicide and prostitution, all of that stuff. Oh no, no, it doesn't happen here. I'm like, it does happen here. And I wanted to do a doco on pee 20 years before we have an epidemic, because of Hawaii was saying we need to keep an eye on it. I wanted to do a doco on pee. But New Zealand's like, oh no, we don't want to put that on. But we're quite happy to get docos from America or, Europe about their problems with that stuff. So it used to frustrate me. But now,
I'm glad you touched on that, especially pee. Like, it's one of these things where I'm like, considering, and yeah, I think I've mentioned to you, Paul, I'm not even in New Zealand, and I'm aware of how bad the problem is. It's like, and I'm not speaking to anyone in particular, but I know friends who are obviously smoking it. It's so commonplace, and yet everyone pretends like it doesn't exist. So it's like, are you really speaking to the experience of the New Zealand people or speaking to the actual reality of New Zealand? If you're just completely ignoring a massive majority of people that like are either going through this or obviously having these sorts of things happen in their daily lives, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. And Mama Tere, when we did that doco, one of the politicians came out to talk to the street workers. And he's like, there's a mum and her daughter and the niece and the kids in the car waiting, and he's like, these people don't care about us. They've got no idea where Parliament is. They don't care. And I'm like, yeah, they absolutely, because they're too busy trying to survive. And he said, and what shocked me was, we don't matter. And I'm like, you absolutely don't matter. And you know why you don't matter? Because they don't matter to you either. And so, he said these people living completely different lives, and like, I was just so shocked. I don't think anything was done about it. But, that's the thing. We put it on there. That's what I can do, and I can write stories about it. One of the things that I am writing at the moment is about women's attitudes to rape, generational. It's a feature film, and it's about how, our mothers and us and then our daughters respond to the same thing happening to each of them. Like, not all at once, historically. So when our grandmothers, when it happened to them, because the stats are phenomenally high, it's just like, oh well, that happened, move on. It happens to everybody. And then when our generation, it happens to us, it was like it sent us into a bit of a tailspin. And then when our young ones, it's like, absolutely not. This is not acceptable. The woman, the French woman whose husband had, raped her for 10 years, drugged and raped her coming out and like saying, why should I hide? I've done nothing wrong. That was like the catalyst for my feature film. I'm like, absolutely. And because I'd been trying to write it for ages and getting pushback from all over the place. I'm like, nah, we need to talk about this, and it's about healing. It's not about the rape. It's about how we as a people need to put the shame where the shame belongs, and it's not on the women, and heal, So
like, what sensibilities are you protecting by not allowing us to make this story and like have this story in the front? Because you're totally right that the rape is not the subject matter. The subject matter is being able to either take control or take the power back, and actually being able to tell those stories and be like, we're not afraid to address it and how it should be addressed. And people can be uncomfortable. That's their problem.
Yeah. Why are they uncomfortable? And I'm a little bit tired of being told to be quiet. So I have to, my voice is through my writing. So, and I'm helping a whole lot of other women do it as well. Because, I was afraid that you might not be able to see me and hear me because I'm over 50. So, I hope I can,
You real man, Paula. What are you talking about?
Well, you always get told that once you pass 40, you're sort of obsolete as a woman. Which, I'm finding with my friends who are working for people that it's actually a thing.
This podcast is powered by WIZZFX. We make brands sound sick. Music, radio, podcasts, sonic branding. If your audio needs to hit harder and stick longer, WIZZFX has you covered. Learn more at WIZZFX.com.
Because I can speak to my own mother who's 60 and she's losing her job in a couple of weeks, and I've been helping her with job applications. It's almost like she doesn't exist anymore, and it's ridiculous because I think I said to her in all confidence 4 weeks ago, I was like, yeah, you're going to have no problem. It's fine. And now I'm realizing after helping her for months and months on end, what is happening. You're right. It's almost like people are treated as obsolete. What is going on?
Absolutely. I was treated as obsolete when I came out of hospital and I was in a wheelchair. Like, I'm double whammy there, and then but I just sort of thought, well, I have to make my own work, and I have to do my own things, and I have to push the really hard doors that don't open. I have to push them open, and I have to find my tribe. So I've got a whole lot of really good people that I work with that understand we're all the same. We all come from the same background. And I'm really keen to work with people who don't have those safety nets, who do find it hard to push through because they're not connected to anybody, or they don't have the network, or they don't have, financial stability. They're just working week to week, or they do have kids. They're single parents. Totally, those are the people that will stay loyal. Is the other thing. I've got friends who have put people out there and they just never come back. And I'm like, yeah, they'll come back when they need a job. That's when they'll come back. But so we're just trying to create a tribe of people who want to do our own thing, and figure out a different way of doing things, figuring out a different way of getting funding. We're just trying. That's what we're trying to do.
And it's mostly just building community, which transitions quite well into the fact that you began researching Dame Whina Cooper, and you actually said in an interview that you didn't actually know much about it. And I'll be totally honest, until I watched your film, neither did I. It's one of those things like I knew who she was, I knew roughly what she had done, but I think getting a better understanding, and it was kind of like nice listening to you talk about it in that way, because it was very much the same experience for me, is that it kind of changed my perception completely, not only of her, but like making me realize how integral she was to the Māori community. So for you, like in that respect, what was it like for you? Kind of like seeing, because you're kind of talking about it in that way as well, like building community, like getting people together. Was it kind of like a bit of a light bulb moment for you, being like, oh, like this is very
totally
like,
was, and I was so embarrassed that I didn't know anything about her really, other than the picture, and she did a land march. So of course, when I did start researching her, I'm like, oh my gosh, we can make a series out of this woman. Like, she just did so much in 100 years, and people don't know. And I found it, I went and spent time with the family, and because again, that's how I do things. If the family weren't happy for me, if they didn't want me on board, then I'm not going to be on board. It really is that simple. I'm not into trying to convince people that I'm the right person for the job. I either am or I'm not, and I'm fine if I'm not. That's all good. But I went to meet Hinirangi and Joseph, who are her son and daughter. Both of them have passed on now, and just spent time with them, just hanging out and talking about sort of what I want to do with Whina, me and James Napier Robertson, who was absolutely wonderful to work with as well. Leon Nabi, he's he's a bit of a god. He's our DOP, wonderful. We had to bring him out of retirement, and he was wonderful. It was just a really cool crew and a really good group of people. And when things go smoothly, then it's the right thing. When things are too hard, maybe not, But I was very inspired by her and what she was able to do and push through. And she had no fear either, which is testament to her upbringing. Her father pushed her into spaces that he knew she could thrive, and she did.
And do you feel like in a lot of ways that's kind of been similar for a lot of your mentors during your life, is that people have pushed you into spaces that maybe you weren't sure you could go into, and then you were like, kind of, you when you saw that you could, that you really ran with it really?
I don't think they pushed me. I think I pushed myself. Hang on, I just open the window because it's really hot. I don't think anybody pushed me. Not really. I think it was a bit hard. It's a bit hard for people to reconcile what I knew I could do with how I looked. Because it was the late 90s, the early 2000s. And, you're always overlooked for a male. Like anything I brought to them was, oh yeah, that's really great. You be the researcher and we'll put this person can direct it or this person. I'm like, yeah, no. I'm the one that's made all the connections. So I'm not sure people pushed me. I don't think I've ever been pushed. I've been supported once I got there, but I've always had to prove myself, and I'm still having to prove myself. It's insane. I'm like, geez, I realize how much. Sometimes you're so focused on what you are aiming for that you forget about all the things that you've done, especially with women. And we're not good at talking ourselves up or talking about ourselves. We are not. And I've just decided, this year that I am going to start talking about things that affect me or that I've done and what I've learned from them. We had a really good workshop, and I got selected for a thing called Rupture, and had a really good workshop with Tony Ear, who's part of Matchbox in Australia. And they have done so much and have commissioned a whole bunch of really cool programs, and them talking about their journey, I'm like, no, we're on the right track. You're never really assured, or you're never really guaranteed anything. Like he was talking about, he did clickbait. Tony did clickbait. It was greenlit by Netflix, and then Change of Guard. And the new one was like, oh, hang on, let's make it not about the internet, and let's make it, and the whole thing is about that. So, him with all of his experience in that, you will still come across people that will question, because of their own insecurities, that will question your ability. So I'm like, oh, that's good. If it can happen to somebody as experienced as him, I'm okay. I get told no all the time, but it's just like water off a duck's back now.
I'm curious, how do you feel that the film would have been different if you weren't involved with Whina, for example? Because, as you said, a big important thing for you being involved with that film is actually having the involvement with the family.
Yeah.
Do you think if anyone else had been at the helm with it and obviously been involved from the writer and directing perspective of it, do you think they would have shown that level of respect, or do you feel like it's kind of something that's unique to you?
I don't know. I just know how I do things. But the script that we got was not, the script that we got was a lot. Her husbands were featured a lot. Let's just say that. There's a lot about the husbands, like Richard and William. Yeah. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, say what you will.
Yes.
Take it as you will.
Yeah, take it as you will. Yeah. So, I mean, that was one of the reasons that they needed us to come on board, is because the script wasn't quite right. And yeah.
Very understandable in that sense then. And Paula, I think this is a great time to kind of also shift to what for many people is always the most difficult thing, which is telling your own story, which we touched on Spinal Destination earlier on, and I think it's worth going back to. Now, for you, because you've said it's natural now that you can confront stories that maybe are quite intense, emotionally intense, but there's something completely different when you're touching on a story that's probably deeply personal to you, and you've gone through the throes of that emotion yourself. How was it kind of going back and looking at the notes and the writings that you had back at Burwood Hospital and being like, okay, how can I make this time for me that was incredibly difficult, probably incredibly emotional? How can I then make that funny? Was that kind of, because I know New Zealand, we're quite well known for the tragicomedy sort of style. We're quite good at laughing at ourselves and making like the most traumatizing and horrible thing also a little bit funny.
Yeah.
What was that like for you, that process?
I wrote it and it's funny. I wrote it funny. I was like, oh my God, this lady with the star on her head, and she's so mean to, and she just like, I wrote it like that. I wrote it because, of course, I thought I was going to be, I wasn't, and it's in Spinal Destination, I wasn't going to be a paraplegic. So I'm just writing funny stories that happened. And, because I had a laptop, one of the lady cleaners came in and bought her laptop in for me to fix. And I mean, I'm just like, well, I don't, but I'll give it a go, and it's just like, and just the funny things that happened. And so it was funny already. But the hard thing was to convince other people that funny stuff happened in the spinal unit. I mean, just because let's face it, if people hurt themselves, we're going to laugh. It's just what we do. Like, we don't mean to. Not if they hurt themselves badly, but if you fall over, like my mum fell down the driveway. And I told her, don't come out. And she fell down the driveway. And I was like really angry that she fell down the driveway. Come back, and I'm trying to fix her up, and I'm as far from Florence Nightingale as you can get. And I had put this big plaster across her face and realised it was too big, and I'm trying to pull it off, and of course her skin, and then it was just it's funny, but like my mum fell on the driveway and face planted on the concrete, which is not funny. But I mean, she was laughing too, to be fair. Like, I wasn't laughing at her, but I was, but it's just because she didn't listen to me. But yeah, so we find humour in tragedy. That's our superpower, I think, as Kiwis. And
Definitely.
so
Can I mention or ask you one thing? Did you ever watch those old ACC ads that they used to play on TV in New Zealand, like the one where the guy would fall off the ladder or something like that?
yeah,
Or the one that accidentally slips over on the toy truck?
and the
Yeah,
bath.
that's what I mean.
Yeah,
Like, isn't it terrible that even now to this day, and when I accidentally watch that, we'll see it come up, I still laugh at it, and I know it's terrible. I completely get what you mean, but yeah, it's horrible.
but that's what we do. That's how we deal with grief. That's how we deal with
100%.
everything.
Yeah.
So I was trying to convince people that this could be funny, because look, it's in a spinal unit. I'm like, what? Do you think we're all just rolling around crying? Like, it's like I keep saying to people, think about if you're on a bus or something, and all of a sudden, all of those people are in wheelchairs. It's so weird because we all have to live together for 5 months, eat together, live together. It's so crazy. But it worked. But the interesting thing was they tried to make me do the story about a man. I'm like, no.
So once again, it's this classic case of trying to pass the reign off to someone else rather than letting you have your story. Yeah.
Let's do the story about John, who was this number 2, and he was fantastic. But the other producer was like, why don't we write John's story? And I think the other thing was about IP as well. If we start from scratch, then the IP doesn't belong to me. And I'm like, yeah, nah, I'd rather not do it. And so it's just like, okay, we'll do yours. And I'm like, yeah. But yeah, it's like, yeah, it was funny. It was tragic. It was sad. It was frustrating. I mean, the other day I was in the pool and I just had a realization wash over me, because I try and be fit and healthy and stuff. And it's 16 years. On the 28th of February, it was 16 years. And I'm like, bloody hell. But then I'm flapping around in the pool like a bit of a demented turtle. The poor lifeguard people, I was like, it's fine, I'm not going to drown, I'm fine, I've got one good leg. But it just washed over me that, like, maybe I'm never going to walk, because I always think I'm going to walk one day. You never know. If they can grow ears on a mouse and, human ears on a mouse and do all sorts of things, maybe they can fix nerves. But it washed over me like, maybe this is it. And then I thought, and I was just like, oh, and then I kind of, let's keep going. Let's flip to the other end. But yeah, it's yeah, I get. We had some really funny things happen, and sad. Like, it is sad, because all of a sudden, it's like writing your whole life book starts again. There's nothing. People say, "Oh, you're still the same person." You are absolutely not the same person. Absolutely not. Everything about you's changed. And with Whina, the reason Whina was so awesome is that everybody knew what I needed and just did it. except the portaloos. Why do you put a portaloo on a hill? Like, seriously. I always face the portaloos, the women's ones to the general population and the men's ones out to the fields where no one's there. Like, so, you know, you can, I was just like, why you put it on a hill? Like, it's just not. But most of the time, but they were awesome, and they just did it. Once they know how I need to get from here to here, they'd put mats down and they would just do it. I had a monitor attached to my wheelchair, which was an Omeo, which is a Segway wheelchair, so it was off-roader, and everybody just did it, which made so much difference to how you actually feel about participating as well.
And do you feel like, in a sense as well, there were times where you maybe got frustrated that people misunderstood your disability in a sense, or like over exaggerated, obviously helping you? And in that respect, because I've heard you speak about the fact that you went through like 3 stages of, like, I guess, grief in a way, like being apologetic about your situation, being angry about it, and then accepting it. Do you feel like that's almost like a case of what you have to do every time you're on a set, and maybe there's people that don't understand? Like, you're just like fucking leave me be, like, I can do this, like, you don't need to be like bowing down to me in a sense.
No, my crew, I use the same crew. I've used the same crew for a long time. Like, I made them for 2 weeks before we actually did Spinal Destination. I made them all roll around in a wheelchair, like everybody. The wheelchairs were there. It was really funny when people come to set, they didn't know actually who couldn't walk and who could. Because everyone's rolling in wheelchairs, and it just, but for me, it just gave appreciation for people. Like, don't leave your shoes right in the middle of the door, you know. Don't just and they were awesome. Like, there's a wheelchair, get in it, roll around, see how hard those doors are to open. You know, see how hard it is just to get up. I took my DOP, Bevan Crothers, who's a really good friend of mine, and rolled around and went to the pub. You know, and he's in a wheelchair, and he felt really bad. He said, what if somebody knows you? I said, well, if they know you, they'll know me, so they'll know what we're doing. And we went to the pub, you know, and he was just really self-conscious. And he ceased, people ignored him and did not see him. And it really, you know, it worked, because it's not just the physical, it's the mental. The mental is actually worse. It's because people just don't see you.
Massively, yeah. I have a friend of mine here, his name's Jerry. He's actually Irish, and he actually decided to move over to Argentina because of the fact he was having so much of a struggle. Actually, one, just general day-to-day living in Ireland, because it's bloody expensive, obviously, if you're in a wheelchair. But then on top of that as well, he was just like, I got treated like a second-class citizen, or I'm not going to use the exact terms he used because he's Irish and probably said some probably not PC terms, but he basically said, everyone treats me like I'm like insane, or there's something wrong with me. And then I even got to see it firsthand here, where it's like people treat you like an inconvenience rather than treating you like a person. And it's like really odd to kind of see that, because it's like I never really think that people would treat people like that, but it's a day-to-day thing. It's really odd.
And the funny thing is, right, the world, the way technology is going, except for us trying to get onto this call, it's about making everything easier for people, right? Easier, like clap your hands, light goes on, you know, like, so why don't people go a step further and make it easier for us as well?
Massively.
Why don't, when you're creating all this technology, like I'm with flying, because I fly a lot, I'm like, why don't you guys have on you got everything what I travel with, so I don't have to say it every time you know, nothing's different, and what I need and what I don't need. I mean, people are usually pretty good. It's the ones that just ignore you, that rips my undies. That's not good, you know.
That's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah, it rips your undies, But like I said, you know, when I first was in a wheelchair, everyone would talk to my daughter, who was 11, and ask me what I needed. And she's like, I don't know, ask Mum, you know. But that's just how it was. And just people are very surprised that I drive. Drive by yourself? Yep. You travel on your own? Yep. Oh, wow, that's amazing. You're so brave. I'm like, I am, aren't I? Yeah,
And
I'm so brave.
like, do you think there is going to be any change in the screen industry? Because like this is just even media industry in itself. Because I certainly know from having worked at actually I think one of the places I worked at was probably one of the only places I've seen wheelchair access, and it was a community access radio station. So bless them for having that. But like everywhere else I've seen, it's like, very tiny elevators that can't fit anyone in, or massive flights of stairs. I think I remember that from MediaWorks, the big flights of stairs. But like, do you think like accessibility is becoming, and I'm not trying to speak to you as if you're an expert, Paula, but do you think it is becoming more acceptable? And I'm not going to use the word acceptable because it's a terrible word. Do you think it's becoming more commonplace that people are considering like different able-bodied people, and not only that, just considering different groups rather than just immediately going for the common, what they consider the commonplace?
I think people are trying, but no. I think like when we edited Whina, we're at Images and Sound, and I love those guys. They are awesome. And they were like, the edit suite's upstairs. I'm like, they said, but it's okay because we can carry you. And I'm like, I said, well, okay, if you carry me, then you've got to carry Leon Nabi upstairs, and you can carry James Napier Robertson. I said, if you're happy to carry everyone, then I'm happy to do it. So they brought the suite downstairs. You know, it's just like, I'm fine with you carrying me if you carry everybody, because, you know, they'll get jealous. And so it's just doing that. And, you know, like I said, people are usually good. Some of those older buildings don't have accessibility, but people kind of make it work. And I think because my aim is to be the first woman in the world, because I Googled it the other day, is there anybody that has directed a feature film, a drama, from a wheelchair, written and directed one? And there isn't. There's been people in wheelchairs that have directed documentaries, feature docs. Well, I've already done that. But drama, a feature film that's a drama that's written and directed by a woman in a wheelchair. I don't even think there's a man in a wheelchair that's done it. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to be that. And then because people are not coming into the industry, well, not that I'm seeing, in chairs, and it really, it's. So I guess I need to be that in order for something to happen. You know, even going to festivals and stuff, nobody thinks I'm a filmmaker. They all think that I'm a volunteer quota person. It's trying to change people's perceptions of wheelchair users, people with disabilities, full stop. But yeah, that's my plan in the next couple of years. Hopefully this year is that.
And you said that everything you write comes from a place of reality, of edge. And I don't know if you do want to talk about this, Paul, because we briefly touched on it off air. But in terms of what are some of the truths or the realities that you feel still need to be shared, is there a particular project that you have coming up soon that you're like, this is going to be my next documentary that shines a light on something that maybe people don't really want to see?
Well, definitely Mahaweka, which is the feature film that I've written. So that touches on rape and how we heal from it, but it also touches on the fact that if you are poor, you don't matter. And I think the Epstein files shows this like in a big way. And you know, how do we deal with getting justice if you can't go the traditional route, which is, you know, the police? And I'm you know, people might say, well, we don't matter whether you're poor or not. Well, that's true, but we matter less if you don't have any money for lawyers, or you don't have the networks to deal with it, or you're not seen to be, you know, you don't have a family that can support you in whatever way, you know, if everybody's the same. So yeah, so that's one thing, is that is still a thing, because when I wrote it and it was assessed, people are saying, oh, is it still like that? And I'm like, yes, it is. And you know, we've got mixed skimmings, right? He's a second, I don't know whether so yes, it definitely is still like that, and everyone casts shade on the the girl, and take all the blame off the person in power. So that's one of the things that I want to make, is that. Doco wise, I've got one coming up called Layers of Black, which is I'm trying to get funded, which is about a Papua New Guinean young man who wants to do the initiation ceremony in Papua New Guinea, who's born in Papua New Guinea and raised in Christchurch, of all places. His dad's white and his mum's Papua New Guinean, and he just wants to reconnect with his brother who was left behind. So that's Papua New Guinea. I want to show a different side, his Papua New Guinea. It's like Ellen and Hazel's Palestine. We show their Palestine, and it's just from a different lens. It's not the hugely emotional clickbait. Everyone's crying all the time. That's kind of not the things that I want to make. What else have I got coming up? Koha, another feature film that is in development. It's about a young girl who is trying to clear the name of an ancestor who, it's a spiritual, it's a magical realism one, who the ancestor is, has been, the stories that are told over generations have become uglier and uglier. So that ancestor is a demon now and is trying to destroy, this girl who is the only one that actually can retell the story. But that's about healing as well. That's a healing story. What else have I got? Year of the Guinea Pig. So Rupture, and that's about an old man who misses his adult children, completely different than everything else. So he misses his adult children, and he's got dementia, and something happened in 1987, and they have to come or move home and figure out what it is. Yeah, that's a comedy. So yeah, but there's a few things, and of course I've got helping people with their stuff as well.
Paula.
And eco horror animation that we got Catalyst funding for, and I'm doing that with a lady called Jo Looping, and she's Malaysian. So we're doing a Malaysian, New Zealand. It's a eco horror about trees eating people.
Paula, how do you have the time to do anything? It sounds like you've constantly got projects on the go. It sounds like you've got ideas flying from every direction. It's how do you balance it all?
And the historical drama that I'm writing with a lady in London. That's a New Zealand Ireland co-pro, and that's an 8-part historical drama about an Irish orphan who ends up in New Zealand in 1880 and is looked after by a Māori chieftainess on Great Barrier Island. Because these stories, I've had them for years and years and years and years, and I've just been developing them. Put them in, doesn't work, keep them. None of my stories, and the only new story is the one I told you about, the one that we're trying to go for the Innovation Fund, the Blood and Bone. That's the only new story that I just, but it's not really, because it comes from a short film that I wrote years ago. But these ideas never, see, I'm like, they're still good ideas, and it's all about timing. So it's not as if I sit there and try and come up with a whole lot of ideas. I just rehash the ones and reconfigure them to now, and obviously it works because and Racist Anonymous, that one I told you about. So that's a comedy that I'm writing with Tainui Tukiwaho. So him and I are working together. And we're doing this one a bit differently too. So it's like an Alcoholics Anonymous group, but it's racist. But so it's a lady who's come over from America to help New Zealand with their racism. And but what we're doing is we're getting all different ethnic writers from ethnic groups to write their own characters. So it's not just Marion Parker. It's like Chinese, and we've got Chinese and Middle Eastern and Indian, and we got a whole bunch of people and they're writing their own characters and their own backstories, and then we'll bring them all into the group and see why people are racist. So that's also a comedy.
I love it, Paula, because if you were to pitch that to someone maybe like 10 years ago, and I think this goes back to your comment on timing, they'd be like, are you insane, Paula? Why would you do that? But I think now more than ever, but now more than ever, like I think it's like cultural relevance changes so much, and the waypoint also changes in terms of what can be talked about. And I think what's awesome is that kind of that wave is being ridden by a lot of people who realize now we can tell these stories because it's relevant more now than ever. We don't need to hide it, and it's better that we are getting a lot of these stories out in the open. And Paula, I guess my final question being, when audiences look back at your body of work, what do you kind of hope that they understand about you personally? Because obviously we can look at the subjects themselves, but what do you hope that they understand about you from the work that you've done?
Well, the interesting thing is I don't have one, I don't just do this style of this or this style of this, or, I do a whole bunch of different stuff. Like animation is something that I'm really interested in too, but because for me, that's what life is. We're just not one, we have horrific moments, we have, funny moments, we have dramatic moments, we have all of these things. So throughout my life, these stories that have really affected me are what I've written down, and however we choose to put them out there is, however we choose to put them out there. But I don't know. I think people can think maybe she's batshit crazy because she's like over here one minute and then she's doing this and then she's doing this and then she's doing this. And I think, I had my kids really young and I made heaps and heaps of mistakes. And I have the time now. I definitely have the time, and I'm not I don't have any really big, I've got a grandson who's 13. He's my sort of priority. And, my mum and my sister, we're all very close, but I don't have any things that I need to do. So I'm the boss of myself. And if I want to do something, I'll do it, and I'll find a way of doing it. And I really, like I said, I really want to be able to help people who don't have that foot in, or don't know how to get into the industry. And we'll just find a way of doing it. So I don't know what they'll look at me and think what a weirdo, but I don't know.
For listening to this episode of the Beyond Broadcast podcast, proudly sponsored by WIZZFX, specialists in audio branding. If you enjoyed the show, give a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform. You can connect with the show on Instagram at Beyond Broadcast Pod and subscribe for updates on new episodes.